So, have you ever had a player try to multi-class to create a unique character, but for whatever reason their mechanics weren't on the same level as other characters in the party? In today's video, we're going to talk about an approach that I've implemented successfully, which is using homebrew magic items to remedy any mechanical deficiencies that you find in a unique multi-class. Hi everyone, my name is John from DM Shower Thoughts, where we find our best selves through gaming. So this is my first video on this channel about multiclassing, which is one of my favorite puzzles in the character building process of 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. I was also inspired to make this video after watching Dungeon Coach's latest video on multiclassing, link in the annotation cards above. If you want a lot of cool homebrew systems to create excellent characters and story moments, I really suggest watching that entire video through. The content of this video is something that can be used as a standalone, or can even be used as part of the systems that he introduces in that video. Now, even though this video is all about how to remedy or create unique stories with multi-classed characters, I am going to do a whole separate video on talking points about building powerful multi-class combos. Multiclassing is a variant rule found in the player's handbook, where when you level up, instead of taking an additional level of the class you're currently in, instead you take a level of a different class. When you multiclass, there are some ability score prerequisites, and you don't get everything from each class. So, for example, you don't get another class's saving throw proficiencies, and their equipment proficiencies are sometimes kind of dulled down. However, a lot of players, including me, really love multiclassing because it allows you to create a unique character story and a character with unique mechanics. Now, one of the dangers of creating a multiclassed character is that if you borrow from different classes that don't mesh well, then that character will be less powerful than a character of a single class. Examples include extra attack features not stacking, casters being limited in terms of which spells that they can pick, and being too jack-of-all-trades instead of specializing in a single role. Now, if you know me personally, or if you watch my video on why I tend to roll 5e using the rules as written, you know that I tend to try not to revise a lot of rules in 5th edition's core mechanics or remove them. That doesn't mean that I'm opposed to homebrew, and I do have a whole separate video on homebrew rules that I do use. When I tend to implement homebrew, or I try to test new mechanics, I usually do it through magic items. This makes the player feel special and unique, because only they have the equipment that they've discovered. And also, if there's something game-breaking, a magic item is much more easily removed from the party than, say, like a feature or a trait. In addition, depending on the magic item's power, if I make the magic item require attunement, it does allow for game balance to be maintained, even though there's some potentially game-breaking effects from that item. So, for example, one of the character concepts that was brought to my attention was that of the Scald, which could be a multiclass between a barbarian and a bard. The story of the Scald is that the power of their barbarian's rage is what fuels their war chant, which ultimately acts as a kind of support ability for other characters in the party. Story-wise, that kind of magic can track, and we have plenty of examples in our real world, such as through war drummers, why that might actually be able to happen in a fantasy setting. And it's also something where a single subclass like Valor Bard doesn't quite fit the exact story that the player had in mind. If you're familiar with how a lot of the mechanics of Barbarian work, you know that those two multiclasses tend not to mesh very well. For example, the Barbarian's Rage ability makes it so you can't cast spells during the Rage, which directly conflicts with one of the main features of the Bard. So my fix was to introduce a new kind of magic item that could only be attuned to a character that has levels in Bard and Barbarian. For the flavor or appearance, I would actually leave it up to the players, whether they want war drums or a battle harmonica, I don't really care. What this magic item would do is remove that restriction from the rage feature. It would make it so that if this character had levels in Barbarian and Bard, if they engaged their rage, they could actually still cast their spells. Also, rage damage is added to Bard spells, and you can imagine a rage-fueled thunder wave coming out of the Bard's mouth and dealing extra thunder damage. In addition, by introducing a new kind of magic item to the world, not only are you allowed to do more world building, but as a DM, you're free to test out new game mechanics without the fear of setting a precedent or an expectation at your player's table. Now also, because the power is contained in a magic item, if you need to make adjustments, you can do so on the fly as part of a discovery story. For example, if the character is still underpowered, you may be able to add an additional feature to the item and have it explained in the narrative as maybe the character unlocking a hidden power that was stored in the item the whole time. Sort of like Matt Mercer's Vestiges of Divergence. If the item ends up being overpowered, one of the things that you can do is add a limiting mechanic, like charges or uses only every short or long rest. And you just make that a discovery as the player uses it. So say the player starts spamming it too many times, eventually they end up getting used up and you're like, you discover that the item only has, I don't know, like 6 charges. Now, if the item ends up being popular enough, you can make it an ongoing thing that travels from campaign to campaign. And it now gives other players the freedom to create unique characters that can also find these special items that can only be achieved through multi-class combos. Other examples of features that items like this might have include having the highest casting stat be able to fuel all of your spells. A lot of times for a multi-class caster, like say Druid Sorcerer, one of the headaches of using the rules as written is having to keep track of different casting stats for different spell casting. Instead, if you have a magic item that releases that restriction, now even though that caster has 2 different sources of their magic, it's all being streamlined through one stat. In addition, you might have a magic item that allows a character to choose a higher level spell from either of their spell lists, kind of like the Bard's Magical Secrets feature. This allows for really cool storytelling possibilities, and that item can now be part of that character's identity. Now, this is the best solution I've come up with remedying weaker multi-classed characters. So now I'm curious, what's been your experience with multi-class characters? Have they tended to be weaker at your table? Have they tended to be overpowered? Are you one of those tables that doesn't allow multi-classing? Let me know in the comments below. And remember, each subscription means the world to us, and it allows us to keep sharing our world with you. So hit that subscribe button, ring the notification bell. Have an awesome day, everybody, and remember, game responsibly. Bye-bye now.